In 1982, I entered Texas A&M University with the hopes of becoming a physical therapist. I made a D in Chemistry 101, I flunked Chemistry 102, and I dropped physics after 3 days. I knew that would not fare well in the competitive arena of getting into physical therapy school, so I had to decide a different plan. I decided I would continue to pursue a degree in community health, and I would spend a lot of time working within organizations at Texas A&M, and in essence getting a degree in leadership, but too bad you don't get grades for that. I left here in 1989 after having a bachelor's degree in community health and a master's degree in adult education, having no idea what I wanted to do. And so I moved home. And a former teacher of mine was now a high school administrator, and she called me and she said, "Have you ever thought about becoming a substitute teacher?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Why do you ask?" And she said, "I think it would be great for you to come back into the classroom to see if or how high school students have changed, and then apply that to your speaking career." I said, "What does it take to become a substitute teacher?" And she said, "Well, you have to go through 6 hours of training." And she said, "You have to take a test." I said, "A test? I've taken a number of tests in the last 7 years." She said, "Well, this is a TB test." I took the TB test. I did not have tuberculosis, and I got to move to the next round. I said, "How much do you make as a substitute teacher?" And she said, $48 a day, but I'll work you every single day. She said, "Again, come back in for a semester to see if or how high school students have changed and apply that to your speaking career." What she and I thought would be one semester turned out to be almost 10 years. Little would I have imagined that I would have spent almost a decade working with people between the ages of 15 and 18. People ask me all the time, "Why are you just a substitute teacher? You have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Texas A&M. You won an incredible award for leadership at Texas A&M. You've done all sorts of things, and you're a substitute teacher. Why would you stay in that role?" After about a year, I had to start thinking about that. And I thought about the opportunity to walk side by side with young people, again, between the ages of 15 and 18, and trying to provide encouragement, mentorship, accountability, and leadership and encouragement in their lives. About a year after I embarked on that journey, I sat down and wrote something to these high school students, and I talked about how their life in high school was a lot like the television shows that I had grown up with in the past 20 or 30 years. I entitled it The High School Experience. And like the sands through an hourglass, so too are the days of our lives. As the young and the restless freshman new to the campus, you try and learn the facts of life while wondering if many tasks will be a mission impossible. To some, it's a different world, encountering many perfect strangers in an atmosphere that is sometimes a circus of the stars. Generations have gone before you, and upperclassmen range from the bold and the beautiful to the bewitched, and occasionally you'll find a wise guy. You look for someone to be your guiding light. You soon resolve the unsolved mysteries and take your next step as life goes on. As the world turns, you'll find many growing pains. You'll encounter many different types of people in high school. You'll find some students that are as sharp as 20/20 and some that specialize in bloopers and blunders. The latter seem to be in another world, and their high school career is more than likely in jeopardy. The day after day star search continues for good friends through the school's All My Children. But life isn't always easy, as you sometimes encounter an odd couple and a family feud occurs. But sometimes in high school, you'll find an ample amount of people who are ready to have fun, and you'll never be hurting for some entertainment tonight. The most positive aspects of the high school experience are the people you meet, the friends you make, and the memories you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. Sometimes in high school, special relationships develop where my 3 sons get together with the designing women, and a love connection evolves, which can eventually lead to family ties. Upon graduation and the completion of the high school experience, some top students are among the colleges America's most wanted, which can eventually lead some to the lifestyles of the rich and famous. To some, the experience has gone by so fast it seems like 60 minutes or 48 hours, while others feel like they have been from here to eternity. But all learn to take it one day at a time and survive many obstacles over the years as they have risen to the head of the class. This high school experience will be over before you know it. So learn when the price is right as you spin this wheel of fortune in this game called life. For most, the experience brings cheers and provides many happy days as we all realize that these are the wonder years of your life, one life to live. And I started thinking about that and why I was in that position, making $48 a day, walking side by side with young people who were going, for many of them, through the wonder years of their lives. And I started thinking about the lessons that I had learned from them and the lessons they could impart to other people. And 2 years into that substitute tenure in my life, I got called in by the principal in the middle of May. And he said, "Cliff, we have an emergency. We have a teacher who needs to fly out of state right now. His mom is deathly sick. We don't know if he will return back to Marshall High School, but we need you to take over his classroom." I said, "Who's the teacher?" And he told me, and I said, "Do you realize what he teaches?" And he said, "Cliff, I've been the principal for 5 years. I know exactly what he teaches. He teaches 5 periods of senior English. And Cliff, I know you have no problem with that subject matter." And I said, "Mike, I don't have a problem with the subject matter. I have a problem with the timing." And he said, "Cliff, it's the middle of May. I don't see a problem with the timing." I said, "Then Mike, how quickly you've forgotten about a disease called senioritis." He said, "Cliff, we think you're the only one who can handle this. Please take this, potentially for the next 2 weeks, and close out these kids' high school career." Turned out that's what happened. The teacher did not return. And I want to take you back to the last day of your high school career. So for some of you, it's longer ago than others, but many can get the feeling of what it was like to sit in class the last day of your high school career. I'm going to take you a step further, and now you're in senior English, the one class that you have to pass in order to graduate. And for 2 weeks, you've had a substitute teacher from Texas A&M. And on the very last day of your high school career, I say this: "I need you to pull out a piece of paper." And they were like, "You need us to do what?" "I need you to pull out a piece of paper." Every period, at least one girl would raise her hand. "Sir, if you didn't realize it, it's the last day. Most of us don't have paper." "Well, we can borrow from others. We can find some in the computer printer here. But everybody needs a piece of paper. You need to put your name on the top. You need to number it 1 through 4. And then I said this: "You won't walk out of here today until you have turned this in." And the tide turned on me. That statement did not go over well at all. As any good English teacher would do, or any English substitute teacher would do, you have to write a prompt on the board. And I wrote the prompt on the board, and it was simply these 3 words: "I've learned that." And they had to fill in the blank for me 4 times. They had to give me 4 lessons that they had learned about life while in high school. About 650 responses came in. I want to share with you my favorite. "I've learned it's useless to make my bed every morning because I'm just going to get back in it later on. I've learned the policeman never pulls over the other guy when he speeds or breaks the law, only me. I've learned you can never get away with things even when your parents are out of town. I've learned a man is a man all of his life, but a woman is only sexy until she becomes a wife. I've learned that most people have to learn the hard way. I've learned that God is always there even when you're not. I've learned you always want the things you cannot have, and once you get them, they're not so great. I've learned never to put myself in the situation where I wonder what could have been. I've learned that life is full of disappointments, but everyone must experience bad times in order to experience the good. I've learned never to be homesick on the day the research paper is due. I've learned the only man a woman can always count on is her dad. I've learned that no matter how dark it gets, there's always a light somewhere. I've learned that when I look my worst, I always see someone I know. I've learned how to cram for a test and pull off an F. I've learned when men are not hungry, tired, or stressed, they are great people to be around. I've learned that maturity is based on the way you handle immature situations. I've learned that for the weak man, happiness is defined by how others see you, but for the strong man, happiness is defined by how you see yourself. I've learned that crying is not something I can hide or should ever try to. I've learned the faster you want the traffic to move, the slower it goes. I've learned that those nights are the best times of my life might turn out to be the worst times of my life later on. I've learned that God is not too big to come down to my level. I've learned that pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. I've learned that people are so wrapped up in a materialistic lifestyle that they have forgotten the true values that make a stylish person. I've learned that the best friend to have is the one who accepts you unconditionally. I've learned that every girl likes a joker, but they don't ever want to go out with him. I've learned that no matter how good of friends you think you are with someone, it's a whole other story when they are on drugs. I've learned that nothing can be gained without a sacrifice. I've learned that strength is born from pain. I've learned that if a guy says he loves you, remember that his actions speak much louder than his words. I've learned I can get away with almost anything with my mom, but nothing with my dad. I've learned that a few minutes of pleasure can bring you a lifetime of pain. I've learned I spend my parents' money much easier than I spend my own. I've learned never to pee on an electric fence. I've learned no matter how hard you work for a coach, it's never good enough. I've learned that when in a position of leadership, never let your head get bigger than your heart. I've learned not to trade what you want most for what you want that moment. I've learned you should never let anything, not even your girlfriend, come between you and your best friend. I've learned that if she says she's 18 and she looks 18, she's probably 12. I've learned you must leave things behind in order to move ahead. I've learned that when you're 10 minutes early coming home, your parents don't care, but when you're 5 minutes late, you're grounded for a week. I've learned every time you meet a really good-looking girl, she has a friend who looks a whole lot better, and you wish you had met her first. They asked me to write my own, and I came up with something like this. I've learned that the size of your biceps, your tires, your stereo, or your car engine has absolutely nothing to do with your popularity or your success after high school. And my two favorite. I've learned to ask God for only three things: His guidance, the courage to do His will, and forgiveness when I don't. And the most poignant, I've learned you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And all of those but one, written by high school kids at John Marshall High School a long time ago. And it reaffirmed to me just how much these high school kids were learning about life. I left that world in 1999 and came to Texas A&M and did leadership training and development for A&M's top student leaders for 7 years. My goal was to try to make an impact at that point, and I had decided, because of a mentor in my life named John Coldis, that you're familiar with because of a building, that I would try to go to lunch or dinner with a different student as often as I could. That happened over 1,800 times between 1999 and 2007. It's now continued, as I've been in San Antonio since 2007, it's happened over 2,200 times. And people would always ask me, is that part of your job? And I would say, no, it's part of my life. You're going to eat anyway, so why not sit down and get to learn another story? You can't imagine some of the stories that have come out in those meal conversations. In 2007, I head back to San Antonio. I go back into the high school classroom for one semester again to see if or how high school students have changed, and I'm still there. In the first year I was there, I carried around a note card, and I simply looked at T-shirt slogans on high school kids. I live to party. It's a 10th grader. Genius by birth, slacker by choice. No longer responsible for my actions. I said, how old are you? And he said, 15. I said, when did you become responsible for your actions? You show me your fly, I'll show you my breast. It's the first student I sent to the office. The rules don't apply to me. I'm out of bed and dressed. What more do you expect from me? If at first you don't succeed, lower your expectations. If my music is too loud, then you're too old. If I get caught, it's all your fault. This is where I nod and I act like I'm listening to you. An awkward morning beats a boring night. I love hot moms. Alcohol, some of the best times you'll never remember. Those were simply taken off of T-shirts of high school students. And some of you might think that they're just for fun. I believe that they're indicative of a generation. a generation that's lost, a generation that desperately needs leadership, a generation that doesn't think much about achievement, they think about entitlement. Generation that doesn't think much about empathy, they're characterized by apathy. A generation that doesn't think much about significance, they're concerned with success. And a generation that doesn't think much about impact, they're more concerned with impressions. And so since 2007, I've spent time at O'Connor High School in San Antonio, Texas, trying to walk side by side, teaching small lessons in life, because my philosophy is, if you can do small things well, maybe one day you can do big things well. And what I've seen by being back in a high school environment since 2007 is there are a whole lot of people who are not paying attention. The two types of parents that I see most often fall into these two categories. Parents who are completely ignorant of who their child is and what their child is involved in. They have a smartphone and they know where their kid is all the time, but they have no idea who their child is. And then the parent who knows everything and they choose to ignore what's going on in the life of their child. I see school districts that are afraid of parents. I see administrators who are afraid of parents. I see teachers who are afraid of administrators. And what happens? 15 to 18-year-olds get their way in all they do. And I wonder what's going to happen one day when they get into the world beyond that, and life doesn't work that way. We've got a generation of people right now who are lost, and a generation who is in dire need of encouragement, of accountability, of examples for responsibility, examples of character, examples of integrity, and examples of goodness. What role will you play? I would highly encourage you to pay attention to the future of this country. I'd ask you to pay your dues and to invest in at least one young person. And then I hope one day they will pay that forward. It's all of our responsibilities to do what's needed to take the next generation to where we would want them to be. Whether that be a meal, mentorship, encouragement, accountability, I would encourage you to pick up the baton and run with it. Good luck and God bless.